So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate. Just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
I tell you, I can't relax, you know? The other night I was in a place I felt like having a few drinks. Someone ordered a bartender. I said, surprise me. He showed me a naked picture of my wife. Tell you the truth, and my wife and I, we never have sex. No. Now, we get undressed. We can't stop laughing, you know? I got no sex life. 10 years ago, my wife put me on hold. My old man, he didn't help at all, my old man. We used to play tag, and he'd drive. It's not easy being me. When I was born, the doctor told my mother I did all I could, but he pulled through anyway.
Good morning. It's Saturday, Rules Saturday, August the 16th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have no free lunch, rules for radical conservatives, rules for anti-radicals, the sovereign child, motivation, meditation, and rules for patriots. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David Bahnsen.
The essential point to grasp is that in dealing with capitalism, we are dealing with an evolutionary process. At the heart of capitalism is creative destruction. Situations emerge in the process of creative destruction in which many firms may have to perish that nevertheless would be able to live on vigorously and usefully if they could weather a particular storm. Joseph A. Schumpeter. We hear plenty from the great Schumpeter throughout this book for good reason. But in this quote, we see three things that are all vital to a worldview of free enterprise. One is the ever-changing nature of it. The dynamics of human action, human needs, and human capabilities are always changing, and therefore the manner in which this is manifested in the marketplace is always changing. This inevitably leads to failures and successes, the latter often creating the former. But not all creative destruction is the natural result of competitive reality. Much of it flows from the inability to survive difficult times. Free enterprise involves offense and defense.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, rules for anti-radicals. This is the introduction. As a quote here, it's nice to be nice and it's good to be right, but alas, public policy is generally driven by neither. If you're like most conservatives, you're ill-suited for political action because you're honest. Accordingly, you assume the motives of those in the political process are relatively honest, or, if not honest, at least responsive to rational incentives. Unfortunately, you're wrong. Maybe you've said, if the legislators, media, political opponents just understood what is at stake, they wouldn't be doing what they are. You then set about educating them. After all, logic and facts are on your side, right? Trust me when I say they probably do understand, they probably don't care. Neither righteousness nor logic alone will save the day. Worse, if you try to educate members of your political opposition, you're likely ceding tactical advantage. Because you're ill-suited to political action, the will of others, particularly leftists, is routinely projected upon your life. Your speech is controlled, your heroes' statues are desecrated, your shop is looted or burned, your wealth is given to others, your children are taught to hate your country and culture. Maybe you've become fatalistic. Quote, the world is screwed, you say, but what can I do? Unquote. The answer is plenty. Rules for Anti-Radicals is a practical guide to the tools and tactics for defeating leftism, both organizationally and in your daily life. Whether you are a concerned citizen, a neophyte who wants to get involved, or a grizzled activist, Rules for Anti-Radicals offers information from perspectives you have likely never seen. People are rarely prepared for political battle because they assume the virtue of their position will win the fight. Guns rights activists, for example, expect to prevail because the Constitution is on their side. If you educate people about their rights, goes the argument, they will have little choice but to support us. So, here are a few truths about issue advocacy. Winning is not about being nice or civil or even right. Aggrieved people usually fail to account for their opposition's use of gamesmanship. Through spin, propaganda, deception, and redefinition, your opposition, or you, can dominate the game even when dead wrong. In other words, your motivation is but marginally related to your tactics. Politics is not the art of compromise. The cliche that politics is the art of compromise is wrong. In political battles, compromise generally defines a process under which you lose slightly less than you would have lost under the opposition's original proposal, but you still lose. Those who insist you compromise usually want you to cede ground while getting little or nothing in return. And I want to interject here that it should be said that politics is the art of negotiation, not compromise. Back to the book. Politics is a battle of competing ideas in which the landscape of the battlefield might force you to cede ground, but you should never do so willingly, never do so without extracting a price, and never compromise your underlying values. Politics is the adjudication of power. Whether you like it or not, he who successfully imposes his will on the opposition wins. Period. As a deliberate strategy, civil disobedience is better suited to leftists because, as society's miscreants, they generally have less to lose. To you, an arrest record represents shame and the potential end of your career. To a black bloc-clad antiphyte, arrest is a badge of honor. That said, as a conservative political activist, you might well be the target of radical violence. We will discuss how to anticipate and counter political threats, including communications, designating event marshals, coordinating with law enforcement, and more. To deploy the tactics in this book, you must develop a thick skin. My running joke is that I aspire to be reviled in all the right places. And that was the introduction to the book, Rules for Anti-Radicals. And let me see if we can figure out by R. Paul Vallone. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Rules for Retrogrades.
Rule 6. Never compromise with radicals on their initiatives. Radicals work to implement the progressive agenda in increments. We can thus call their method incrementalism. There are a couple reasons for this. Were radicals to impose their disordered worldview all at once, it would prove so unnatural and dystopian that it would forever shatter the common man's perception of progressivism as a viable political philosophy. Since many of the ideas of radicals are so far out of the mainstream of Western convention, to avoid backlash, their ideas must be introduced slowly and methodically so as to gradually acclimate people to the brave new world, desensitizing them to its bitterness. Moreover, to hoodwink opposing political parties and to circumvent political resistance, radicals must advance their ideas slowly till such time as they achieve a critical mass, a tipping point at which their perverse ideas have taken root in the hearts and minds of the voting populace. Only then can their end game, their true vision, be revealed, insulated from the hazard of political consequence. Because incrementalism is at the nucleus of radicals' blueprint for capturing the culture, and because radicals are, at this point, the active principle driving cultural change, compromising on disputed issues invariably works in their favor. Consider, for instance, a debate on raising taxes. Let's imagine that a radical lawmaker floats the idea of a 90% federal income tax rate for top wage earners in order to ameliorate a budget deficit. Imagine, too, that one of the radical lawmakers' so-called moderate confreres retorts that a 90% income tax is unreasonable and proposes a mere 50% income tax. After some haggling, perhaps the lawmakers decide to compromise and agree on a 70% income tax rate for top earners. Suppose now that in ensuing years, irresponsible government spending yields yet another deficit. The same radical lawmaker, as is his habit, will again propose raising taxes in an effort to cure the deficit. Again, he will float the 90% income tax number. Again, the radical's moderate confrere will balk at the 90% figure, but wanting to be reasonable and address the looming deficit, the moderate will this time propose splitting the difference and bringing the income tax rate up to a more palatable 80% rate. Should this cycle of punctuated creep be allowed to continue over time, the radical will eventually taste the 90% rate he had been clamoring for all along. While he could not have succeeded in having his demands met at first by working in increments, by appearing reasonable
and settling for a series of upward ascending compromises, the radical has ultimately prevailed. A series of compromises inevitably leads to the active party achieving total victory, since with each successive compromise, the end goal is brought that much nearer. It should also be noted that radicals habitually use ground gained in previous victories as launching points for future attacks. When they make inroads through compromise, they use their forward momentum to springboard themselves to further conquests. Consider the issue of women clergy. Radicals can't simply demand that women immediately assume roles as high-ranking prelates in the church. They'd be laughed out of town. Such a change would be too drastic an overhaul, too severe a breach with timeless tradition to merit serious consideration. And radicals know this all too well. So they take a more cunning tack to achieve their goal. They complain that women are underrepresented in the church, and that in order to fully make use of women's surplus talents, they need more access to even modest positions of leadership and responsibility. As such, radicals may propose that women should have access to lower clerical positions, to the diaconate perhaps. And if, in an ill-conceived attempt to sate feminist lust for power, the church were to try to accommodate such demands and indulge radical women by appointing them deaconesses, it would be only a matter of time before radicals pointed to the deaconesses that had achieved a certain amount of renown or stature and pointedly inquire why, since these women have fulfilled their lower clerical duties with such distinction and aplomb, should they be prohibited from acquiring the office of priestess? Pressing their advantage, they would put the church on the spot by asking the very questions whose unseemly answers were the impetus for its initial capitulation. In pressing their advantage in this way, radicals would continue to gain ground at an exponentially increasing pace. If this pattern were allowed to continue unabated, given the passage of enough time, eventually, women would attain the papacy. Radicals rely on incrementalism, and incrementalism thrives on a system of compromise. Hence, the retrograde must never compromise with the radical on a disputed issue. He must steadfastly refuse to give ground, gnashing his teeth before budging an inch. In this way, we can blunt the advance of radicalism and begin to make our own headway in the culture wars.
And that was Rules for Retrogrades, 40 Tactics to Defeat the Radical Left by Timothy J. and David R. Gordon. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little motivation.
Where is the wealthiest place in the world? Do you know? It's the graveyard. Because in the graveyard, you will find inventions never invented, businesses never erected, songs never sung, books never written, ideas never nurtured, people never realized. Because they never prioritized their dreams. They never made them important enough. The things that are the most important to you are the things that get done.
I need you to reevaluate what you're prioritizing in your life. Are the things you're doing each day the things that are going to move you forward in life, lead you to a happier, healthier, more fulfilling life? Or are you wandering around distracted, caught up in the noise and chaos of social media, news, or what's happening around you?
Your focus, your attention is a laser. And what you point that laser at is what will grow and increase. So I need you to focus on what you are focusing on. Be aware of how you are using your attention and direct it towards where you want to go in your life.
You are where you are because of who you are. And if you're going to get somewhere else, you're going to have to change something. I don't care what happens in your life. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care where you are. Every single day you wake up, if you're going to have energy, if you're going to have passion, if you're going to have drive, every day you wake up, you got to start with that vision. every day when I wake up, people say, why are you so excited? Because I have a mental picture of where I want to be. I have a mental picture of what I want to do. And even when I was in that abandoned building, I saw that I would not be in an abandoned building forever. And I was homeless once, now I own 2 homes. Because although my circumstance was homeless, my vision wasn't. The first level to success in life, the very first level, is you seeing it like it's clear to you. You know exactly what you want. You know exactly when you want it. You know exactly what it tastes like. You know what it look like. Before you really blow up, and you get success, you literally have it in the palm of your hand without having it. What does your dream look like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What do you want in your health? What do you want financially? Like, how much money do you want to make a year? How do you want to live? Stop just waking up like an accident. What do you want? And then once you find out what you want, spend the rest of your natural life waking up and going after it. Look at your belief system every single day and stick with it. Don't rush the process. Trust the process. Don't rush the process. Trust the process. Don't rush the process. Trust the process. Stop looking for affirmation. Stop looking for somebody to pat you on the back. And you just get up on Monday and grind. And get up on Tuesday and grind. And get up on Wednesday and grind. And get up on Thursday and grind. And get up on Friday and grind. And if you grind, no days off, no holidays, no snow days, no weekends off, no birthdays. You heard me. If you keep grinding and you stay persistent and you locked in, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to be exactly where you dream to be.
Because it's easy to say, I want to be this, I want to do that. Hey, I want to be significant. Hey, I want my life to matter. Hey, I want to be a millionaire. Hey, I want to drive a fucking Lamborghini. But unless your actions on a daily basis reflect that goal every single time, every single move, every single fucking second that you're awake, your goals aren't really your goals. You're just full of shit.
Because if you really want it, nothing would stop you. All of the silly things that happen that we let slow us down is related to our lack of hunger and desperation. So how desperate are you for what you want?
Everybody wants to wait and put off the things they truly want in their lives for tomorrow, the mystical place where 99% of dreams go to die. It's, oh, well, you know what? I didn't eat that much today. It's okay. I'll wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be there. No, tomorrow isn't going to fucking be there.
Tomorrow. Ain't no such thing as tomorrow. We only got today. What I've learned about the greats is that they understand it's a sense of urgency that once the clock goes out, it's a W or an L. You either win or you lose. There's a sense of urgency. You don't have as much time as you think you do. And so you got to pick up the pace. You walking too slow. Pick up the pace. You moving too slow. Pick up the pace. You don't have a lot of time. You only got 24 hours. So all of your energy needs to go into your goal. Why? Because I love myself too much to get distracted. I love myself too much not to execute. But I need you to stop just randomly letting stuff happen to you. And I need you to take over your life. And a schedule is about bossing your time.
The secret is to make a plan, execute the plan, come obsessed with the plan, and make it your entire life from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed for 20 fucking years. It takes dedication, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes obsessive, ridiculous amounts of effort. I get sick and tired of people telling me how bad they want it, yet their actions don't back up that statement. Don't be somebody who talks shit. Be somebody who does shit.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation.
Welcome to this 5-minute gratitude meditation. In the next few minutes, we will open our hearts, calm our minds, and awaken a deep sense of appreciation for life. Gratitude is the bridge between where you are and the joy you seek. Let's cross that bridge together. Find a comfortable position, sitting or lying down. Close your eyes gently. Take a slow, deep breath in. And exhale fully. Feel the ground supporting you holding you steady in this moment. Let your body relax. Let your mind settle. Breathe in slowly. Imagine drawing in warm, golden light filled with love and positivity. Hold for a brief moment. And now exhale gently, releasing all tension, stress, and worry. Again, inhale peace and abundance. Exhale and let go of anything that no longer serves you. Stay with this rhythm, soft, steady, and peaceful. Now, bring to mind 3 simple things you feel grateful for today. It might be your health, someone you love, the beauty of nature, or a moment of kindness. See each of these blessings in your mind's eye. With each breath in, feel a warm golden light in your heart grow brighter. With each breath out, let that light expand, filling your whole body and beyond. Let gratitude flow through every cell, every thought, every feeling. Silently or out loud, repeat, I am grateful for this moment. My heart is open to abundance. Gratitude fills me with peace and joy. Take one final deep breath, feeling that golden light within you. Carry this gratitude with you into the rest of your day, allowing it to guide your thoughts, your words, and your actions. Thank you for sharing this moment of gratitude.
And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Law and Order.
How did you find me?
Your credit card. We would have talked to your fiancé first, but the casino didn't know who he was.
We were just assisting the Norwich police in an investigation. A woman was assaulted in the washroom in the lounge the evening you were there. Did you see anyone in the area? No.
Okay, so they're lying. They're flat out lying. They're doing a murder investigation. These are the two detectives on Law and Order, Lupo and I can't remember the other guy's name. And so they're doing a murder investigation. They've gone up to, I guess it's Connecticut, to talk to this woman to try to get her to identify the man in a particular photo. And so they flat out lied to her. They didn't tell her they were investigating a murder. They said that, some woman was assaulted in the washroom. Baloney. And again, the reason that's important is because the Supreme Court back in 1966 said that the police department has the right to lie to suspects, right? So when they're sitting down doing an interrogation, they don't have to be honest with the suspect. They can lie to the suspect in order to get information, possibly a confession. And here they are lying to a witness or a potential witness. They're not even sure that much, but flat out lying. So again, that's the problem with giving the police department or any other government agency the right to lie, is then it goes from this narrow situation where you can lie to a suspect to the police just lying to whoever it is that they want to lie to. They're going to lie to suspects. Why not lie to witnesses? Why not lie to judges, juries, maybe their families, and even themselves? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Dark Triad.
In psychology, the Dark Triad represents 3 personality traits: narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. If we were to ask the 3 who has the darkest personality, the narcissist would say, me. The psychopath would say, I don't care. And the Machiavellian would say, it's whoever I want it to be. People scoring high on the 3 traits are more likely to commit crimes and create severe social problems in society, families, and organizations. This is why the research on the Dark Triad is used widely in law enforcement, psychology, and business. Here is an overview of what we know. The narcissist displays grandiosity, entitlement, and superiority, and wants nothing more than admiration. Once he gets what he wants, the narcissist is rarely interested in other people. When he does care, it's to enhance his status, which is why he likes to mingle with successful others. They seem as though they're completely in love with themselves, but at the root of their inflated egos are often deeply held feelings of inferiority. To protect their constructed self, they can never admit to being wrong, which is why they lie or blame others. Machiavellians are unprincipled, cold, and have a cynical view of other human beings. They like money, power, and winning, and they use manipulation to get what they want or exploit others. If manipulation doesn't work, they steal or betray. Those high on the spectrum believe it's better to be feared than being liked, and offend others as a strategy to control them. When you are a psychopath, you come across as cold, and others think you are scary. You also show little to no fear, act impulsively, and you enjoy mental thrills. Those high on the spectrum don't form any emotional bonds. The result is a complete lack of compassion. That means they have no problem being mean. If something terrible happens, they later often don't feel any remorse or guilt. The research tells us that men score significantly higher on all 3 compared to women. And while these 3 personalities are empirically distinct, they do overlap. Clinically, both narcissism and psychopathy are regarded as mental disorders, while Machiavellianism isn't. Whether nature or nurture is responsible for these traits has been somewhat answered by twin studies that show that narcissism and psychopathy have substantial genetic components. Machiavellianism seems to be less prevalent in pairs of twins. However, the environment also matters. A psychopath may not only pass down his genes, but influence a child by being a role model. A Machiavellian father shares with his son not only genetic material, but might also show him all his tricks. The son of a narcissist not only gets his dad's chromosomes, but may also experience his perfectionism. With the big 5 personality traits, also known as Ocean, the 3 correlate either positively or negatively. Narcissists and psychopaths are often open to new ideas and extroverted. Psychopaths and Machiavellians have low conscientiousness. All 3 personality types score low on agreeableness. And psychopaths are hardly neurotic. Whatever happens leaves them cold. An evolutionary explanation for these traits could be sexual strategy. Many of us pursue a slow life, invest in long-term relationships, have a few children, and spend time on parenting. Dark Triad traits may have survived because they look to optimize a fast life. Their ancestors lived in an unpredictable and dangerous world. Because of a shorter life, they sought many sexual partners, spent no time on parenting, and did not invest in human relationships. This may also explain why they strive in competitive environments, such as corporations. Here, a Machiavellian may use charm and insults to manipulate others. The narcissist is physical appearance, and a psychopath, physical threats. And since they all lack compassion, they often elbow their way to the top, which is maybe why all three dark traits are well represented in upper-level management. But there are also downsides. If your mind was programmed to be impulsive, aggressive, and selfish, you are also more likely to abuse drugs, feel excluded, suffer from depression, or end up in jail. This is why we may not only find ways to protect ourselves from these darker minds, but also have empathy for them. After all, maybe they didn't choose to be that way. What about you? Did you inherit some dark triad traits? And if that's the case, and if you are aware of them, did you develop strategies to cope with them? Share your thoughts in the comments below and read the description to dig deeper and find relevant links, sources, and information.
And that was the Dark Triad. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, rules for Patriots.
Chapter 12, Conclusion. For a while now, you've suspected your wife hasn't been telling you everything. She's always cared about her appearance, but lately she's been piling on the makeup like she hasn't since you were dating. She showers a lot and takes longer lunches. Her text message alerts on her phone go off, prompting her to giggle and blush. You ask her what's up. Oh, just a friend saying something funny, she says. You even hear her mumbling another man's name in her dreams at night. You know in your gut something is amiss. You suspect a betrayal is happening right under your very nose, but you have loyalty to this relationship. Not to mention the fact you don't want to be made to look the fool, and you're scared of what the endgame is should your suspicions prove to be true. This has been the only life you've ever known. If you confront her and she doesn't want to work through the situation, can you handle living life alone? Are you really going to start dating all over again? Will you ever be able to trust again, even if you were? Not yet ready to wrestle with those questions, you decide to punt and kick the can down the road for now. Essentially, you decide you would prefer to live a lie rather than confront the potential truth. Weeks go by and you pretend to be blissfully ignorant, but in the back of your mind, the lack of intimacy between you and your wife is starting to really gnaw at you, especially since you're pretty convinced another man is rubbing your rhubarb. But again, the thought of confronting the truth is just too painful. Until one day, you come home from work early, and there's a strange car in your driveway. You unlock the front door and are greeted with awkward noises and moaning coming from upstairs. Your instincts have you climbing the stairs to see what's going on when you really don't want to know. The front door to your bedroom is wide open. You reach the top of the stairs and peek through the doorway, only to witness your wife carrying on with another man in the middle of the day in your own bed. Shattered, you say not a word as you descend to the bottom of the stairs. You walk into the family room, looking out the window, pondering your next move. Emotionally, you're a mixture of anger, revolt, and defeat. All of a sudden, you hear the refrigerator door open in the kitchen. But before you walk over to see who it is, you are confronted with the image of a naked man drinking one of your favorite beverages, walking right past you like it's nobody's business. He doesn't even acknowledge you're there, while he sits down in your recliner and leans back to bring the footrest up. He says not a word until he brazenly asks you, "Hey man, do you know where the remote control is?" This is the point of no return grassroots patriots have reached with the current leadership of the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan once famously said, "I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me." These days, millions of grassroots patriots around the country feel the same about a Republican Party seemingly hell-bent on abandoning every principle other than crony capitalism. Recently on Fox News, conservative rock star Sarah Palin channeled that frustration when she said, quote, "I love the name of a third party, Freedom Party, and if the GOP continues to back away from the planks in our platform, from the principles that built this party of Lincoln and Reagan, then yeah, more and more of us are going to start saying, you know what? What's wrong with being independent? Kind of with that libertarian streak that much of us have. In other words, we want government to back off and not infringe on our rights. I think there will be a lot of us who start saying, GOP, If you abandon us, we have nowhere else to go except to become more independent and not enlist in one or the other of the private majority parties that rule in our nation, either a Democrat or a Republican. Remember, these are private parties, and no one forces us to be enlisted in either party. Whenever I'm asked about this, and I'm asked about this a lot, I usually say, I'd like to try a second party before thinking about a third one. Venting frustration is one thing. Acting upon it is entirely another. When we're frustrated, there are plenty of things we can justify as a response, but many of those things aren't necessarily prudent. That's why we have the saying, cooler heads prevailed. On the other hand, there is certainly a time and a place to fashion a whip of cords or grab the jawbone of an ass and give him your best Howard Beale. So is it time for us to abandon the GOP or continue to try and reform it? Let's do a cost-benefit analysis before deciding. Number 1, the vision. Here's the cost. With the light of liberty barely a flicker, the absolute worst use of time for conservatives would be essentially starting over to form a third-party movement that may take decades to realize. Given how much freedom, liberty, and morality we've lost, our constitutional republic probably doesn't have decades. We need to do as much good as we can, and we need to do it right now. Benefit. Loyalty to the Republican Party has done nothing to squelch our slouch towards Gomorrah or statism. We've wasted years as it is, propping up neo-statists and gutless rhinos with little to nothing to show for it. Instead of wasting more time on the rotting corpse that is the GOP, better to get to work now on what will inevitably take its place. Short-term thinking is what got us here in the first place. Number 2, political impact. Here's the cost. Leaving the Republican Party would essentially hand almost every election of consequence to the Democrats for the foreseeable future and render conservatives meaningless in the grand scheme of things. Furthermore, if no longer held accountable by conservatives, you'll likely see the Republican Party ruling class openly conspire now with Democrats to continue to grow government, which means liberty will be lost even quicker. This rash move would take us quicker to irrelevancy. Benefit. The Republican Party ruling class is already conspiring with Democrats to grow government, despite our presence. In 2013, they passed the largest tax increase of 20 years. That's just one example. At least if we're no longer covering for these sellouts, we can recover some integrity lost by associating with the tarnished GOP brand and perhaps have an honest conversation with the American people about where we're headed for once. By forming a third party, we become de facto independents, and instead of being taken for granted, we become a crucial swing vote. Number 3, organization. Cost. Sure, there are days when the idea of bolting the GOP sounds great, but it's not feasible. The two most viable right-of-center third parties, the Libertarian and Constitution parties, still don't have consistent ballot access in all 50 states. Good luck recruiting candidates without ballot access. Good luck raising money without candidates. And good luck moving your agenda without money. The reality is the two dominant parties have made this kind of effort almost impossible without unprecedented fundraising / legal effort to build up to it. I don't like it. I wish that weren't the case, but it is what it is. Benefit. That was the same argument used against our founding fathers when they wanted to declare their independence. If there's anything American history has taught us, it's that when we step out on faith and principle, Providence handles the rest. One great way to ignite such an effort is to have leaders with the charisma, vision, and integrity lead the way in inspiring others to act on the courage of their convictions. Maybe some of those leaders will emerge if we step out on faith. Founding fathers like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson became the men we know them as today because they rose to the occasion when history needed them. Number 4, the future. Here's the cost. Most of us would agree the party is broken. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. The brokenness of the party reflects the cultural brokenness of the times in which we live. All private organizations are only as good as the people inhabiting them. Any new organization will eventually just develop the same problems that GOP has now. You can't expect a political party to have more moral purity than the culture as a whole. Still, reform is necessary. Instead of reinventing the wheel, why not encourage members of the Constitution and Libertarian parties to infiltrate the GOP? Many local and state Republican Party organizations across the country are in dire need of people. Who says those people can't be people of principle? Let's do to the GOP from the bottom up what the progressives already did to the Democrat Party. There's no reason we can't overrun the party's infrastructure and put our own people in there. Benefit. Some libertarians tried this, and look what the party bosses did to them at the Rules Committee meeting prior to the 2012 convention in Tampa. That was Soviet-style politics. Of course, you can't expect a private organization to be more righteous than the culture, but that actually proves my point. We are aligned with people who don't share our moral value system and have proven they will do things to beat us they would never do to Democrats. And they'll even use Fox News and other conservative media to do it. The time, talent, and treasure wasted on reforming the GOP is like trying to funnel foreign aid for the hungry through a corrupt local warlord. Whatever we send just ends up in his pocket. Let's face it, this whole debate is moot anyway, because the party bosses are in the process of betraying us first. Thus, the longer we wait, the harder it will be to do what we'll eventually have to go ahead and do anyway. Now that you've had a chance to weigh the pros and cons of each side of this argument, it's time for you to decide. I don't know about you, but I don't think this is a clear-cut call. In fact, I see compelling arguments of evidence on both sides. But what if I told you that you may not have to choose? That you might be able to have what amounts to a third party without starting completely over and losing the ground you've already taken? When I pitched the idea of this book to some friends of mine, they were concerned that the other side would read it and then know our playbook and use it against us. But I explained to them that's not possible, because this attack plan only works with our worldview. The reason you don't see too many Republican leaders using these 10 commandments of political warfare, and we've had to cite several of the same names over and over again as examples of Republicans that do, is because most Republican leaders can't use them. They don't have the worldview to use them, so it wouldn't work for them even if they tried. They'd simply be exposed as posers. For these tactics only work for those with conviction. Thus, they have to resort to tactics that look more in line with what the left does than what you just read in this book. If they ever actually deploy any tactics at all, that is, most of the time they don't even do that. They simply wait until their soulless consultants, who are usually dumber than they are, tell them what to think. If you put the commandments in this book to practical use wherever you have influence, you're going to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff real quick like. Whether that's at your state legislature, a town hall hosted by your congressman who's home for recess, your local state party, when you're running for office, or even casual conversation among friends and families. That's one of the things these commandments are meant to do. Here's another thing. For too long, we have mistaken friendlies for friends. Friendlies are people you can align with on a temporary basis when your vested interests are mutual. But those aren't long-lasting relationships. As circumstances change, your friendlies can become your enemies once your vested interests no longer intersect. Now, friends stick closer than a brother. Friends get in a foxhole with you. Friends have your back when the going gets tough. Friends share your convictions and mission. And although at times you may disagree on how best to carry it out, you're both aiming for the same end goal. Most of the Republican leaders we have aligned ourselves with are friendlies, but they are not our friends. This explains why at the time they seem so right on, and at other times so far off. They're so right on when we have mutually beneficial vested interests, and so far off when we don't. Sometimes they'll shield us from the firing squad aiming for us, and then sometimes they'll join it. If they were friends, they'd have the same angst and sense of urgency for our civilization's future that we have. They wouldn't need prodding or pressure to take a stand. We wouldn't have to worry about what will happen the minute we stop hounding them to do the right thing. Increasingly, our friendlies have become less and less friendly. But instead of letting our friendlies use us, why don't we use them? Children see things in extremes, but adults draw distinctions. We need to stop having a childlike relationship with the GOP, where we rely on the party to save America and treat its big names like our favorite athletes. Hey, I'll trade you a Marco Rubio rookie card for a Paul Ryan All-Star. How ridiculous does that sound? Yet, that's often how we've behaved. Political parties prey on that sort of cult of personality, and they encourage it, for it means politics becomes about personalities, not about principles. Personalities are much easier to manipulate. Principled leadership comes with a cost and often requires sacrifices like lives, fortunes, and sacred honor that a ruling class would prefer not to make. Here's my big idea. We don't owe this party any loyalty. I repeat, we don't owe this party any loyalty. One more time, in case you missed it. We don't owe this party any loyalty. They owe us. There would have never been a Reagan era to wax nostalgic about if it weren't for us. The Republican Party was going nowhere fast after the Watergate era until the birth of the conservative movement. The Republican victories of 2010 were done in spite of the party. They didn't want champions like Ted Cruz, remember? We had to drag them kicking and screaming into the winner's circle. The Republican Party didn't make us. We made them. We don't take the orders around here. We give them. Or at least we ought to be. We don't take any sanctimonious lectures from our employees about how half a loaf is better than none or the lesser of two evils. We run the show. So we determine what the acceptable standard is, who met that standard, and how to hold them accountable when they don't meet it. I no longer feel a compulsion to vote for every Republican opposite every Democrat, and I haven't voted straight ticket Republican in years. I came to realize that's the coward's way out. Doesn't mean I'm voting for Democrats, but it does mean I'm also no longer voting for Democrats calling themselves Republicans. But Steve, some of you will say, at least a bad Republican is better than a good Democrat. If by now you haven't realized that a bad Republican and a good Democrat are one and the same, immediately go back to page 1 and start rereading the book. But Steve, some of you will say, in our system majority rules, so even a bad Republican will still vote Republican for leadership positions. So what? Why in the Sam Hill should I care if John Boehner or Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House? Not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times in 2013, Boehner allowed bills to pass out of the House of Representatives a majority of Republicans didn't vote for. 2 of those were the largest tax increase in the last 20 years and the largest tax increase of all time, Obamacare. So what's the point of having a majority then? At least when Pelosi is giving us failed policies and statism, I can blame it on her and the Democrats, and then recruit good candidates to challenge them in the next election. Bad Republicans are actually worse than Democrats in that respect because they depress the conservative base and make it harder to get our people engaged. Think about it. Are you more eager to take on the perp who breaks into your house and threatens your loyal and loving wife, or the disloyal wife you found out was cheating on you? One situation spurs you to act on your God-given masculine instinct. The other rips your still beating heart from your chest and demoralizes you. I agree success in our system is based on building coalitions, but those have to be coalitions of the willing. What is the point in giving Ditch McConnell or Lindsey Graham another 6 years in the United States Senate? Why would I align myself, even temporarily, with someone who has more in common with Democrats than with me, especially when they come from red states like Kentucky and South Carolina? Who cares if the Democrat wins in those sorts of places? Because they'll be easier to beat in the next election in those states. But let a Republican like Ditch McConnell become an entrenched incumbent, and you'll suffer under his gangster government for decades. See, adults don't need instant gratification. Children do. Adults put off instant gratification because they see the bigger picture. Children get emotionally manipulated to act upon what's best right now, without any perspective. Granted, if a Scott Brown is the best you can do in the bluest of blue states like Massachusetts, so be it. But as groups like Club for Growth and Madison Project point out, there's no reason not to have a real conservative as the senator to every red state and the congressman to every red district. I say we start building from there, and then it's easier to keep the squishes of the world like Scott Brown in line once elected, when they're surrounded by a caucus led by the likes of Ted Cruz and not Ditch McConnell. There are some simple, notice I didn't say easy, steps to actually forging a real opposition party in America again. Before making the decades-long investment in a viable third party, why not try this? We don't have to be mascots for the GOP, but simply use the GOP as a means to an end when it suits us. I'm not talking about reforming the Republican Party, because it's well beyond that now. I'm talking about essentially running a party within a party and using them the way they've used us for years, and only on our terms. Stop treating the GOP like a religious cult. Let's reevaluate our relationship with the party and make it less personal and more businesslike. When your employees don't do the job you hired them to do, you don't feel emotionally betrayed and then close up shop. No, you simply fire them and get better employees. This party isn't deserving of our emotions, nor is it worth the salt in our tears. And no political party ever has been. No matter where we go or what we build, we'll eventually manifest the same problems. Trust me, I'm an evangelical. We break up churches and start new denominations all the time, believing that this time we'll get it right. But we forget the problem is ultimately us. Someone once asked G.K. Chesterton, "What's wrong with the world?" He gave them a one-word answer: me. Our nature is fallen, as is all of creation. The Republican Party, or any organization or institution for that matter, is only as good as the people inhabiting it. When we turn a political party into a church and politicians into angels/demigods, we're asking for the very same disappointment we have received. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and render unto God that which is God's. Do not give Caesar your conscience or virtue. That belongs to God. When Caesar demands either, he's demanding you recognize him as God, and we should have a simple answer for that. No. We don't contort our moral values into a pretzel to justify voting for another Republican hack. We demand that Republican hack meet our standard for hiring, or heaven hath no fury like the next primary cycle. Speaking of primaries, they are the most immediate route to move the country right. In many places, we in the grassroots outnumber the establishment. So as long as we actively and smartly participate in the primary process, replacing these Republicrats is not nearly as hard as we've been led to believe. But for too long, we have ignored the primary process at our own peril. So we're now at the point that the primary really is the election. For if the wrong kind of Republican wins the primary, the general election becomes a moot point. If you're aligned with a conservative or libertarian organization that isn't willing to take a strong and public stand in primaries, get out now. More than likely, they are little more than caretakers for the ruling class, running their own shadow incumbent protection program. Primaries separate the men from the boys. Primaries tell us who's here to really take on the system and who's here to be a part of the system. Seriously, I think if we just did those two things, stopped being partisan loyalists and started participating in primaries en masse, we'd be amazed at how much positive change we could see based off that alone. And that's something you can do even if you want to belong to a third party and not be a full-time Republican. Many states allow you to vote in open primaries or register on the same day as the event. Why not go in, vote for the best constitutional conservative on the ballot, and then get back out if you want? Barack Obama is correct about one thing. We are the people we've been waiting for. Change for the better is not going to come from the top down beginning in Washington, D.C. Change is only going to come from the bottom up when we in the grassroots get mad enough to make it happen. Get mad. Stay mad. Now in your anger, we do not sin. But anger can be a powerful and virtuous motivator when under control. Like when a mama grizzly is angry that a predator threatens her babies. Like when a father is angry that a perpetrator threatens his family. Like when a loving but holy God is angry at what sin has done to his creation. The system is counting on our complacency. And if we're being honest, we have to admit to ourselves, it has every reason to. But we've always been the ones in charge. We've always outnumbered them. We've just been unwilling to act like it. Now is the time for that action. The clock is ticking on these United States of America. The last best hope for human freedom this side of Eden is on the brink of becoming a footnote in human history. Do you want to be the generation that has to look our children in the eye and explain why liberty died? Not on my watch. Who's with?
And that was the final chapter of Rules for Patriots, How Conservatives Can Win Again by Steve Deese. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that rights are not collective. They are joint and several.